Okay. Well, I'll do what I can, but I don't
Oh, don't
think I'm.
worry. You'll probably remember as much as most of us. With that,
Are
we
you
are
sure
live.
about that?
Uh, Here we are again for Anime Anticlimax. This is the spooky season. And so we had to pick a spooky anime. And of course, I'm here with Brittany from Embryo Arts, and of course, Kotobuki Jake, who's the co host here on this channel. So, technically, I guess we're all co hosts for this particular series. And we all had our choices, and it rolled up, and one of Jacob's choices got chosen, which was Ghost Stories. Um, and I will hand it over to you, and we can start the discussion. You can just lead us, and we'll just try and chime in as we go.
Okay. Um. Sorry, I'm still trying to get something ready for it. But anyway, so as he said, we are covering old, uh, a little old anime known here stateside as Ghost Stories. Um, this is a show that originally aired back in 2000 to 2001. And let's see here, directed by Noriyuki Abe. Uh, 20, what was it, a 20 episode series, I believe.
Yeah, that was a kind of an odd
Yeah.
number for one, but definitely 20.
Um, and the show is probably best known, and I should say as well that it is properly known as Agako no Kaidan, but it is better known to Western audiences as Ghost Stories. It's also known as that show with the really, really, really crazy dub.
Indeed.
That is probably the show has become almost infamous, one might say, for
To be
not.
fair, this was an intentional bad dub.
Oh yeah. No, I was going to say it's infamous almost not so much for the crazy wacky dub as it is for the intense disparity between the original voice recordings and the original intent of the anime and what we ended up getting here. And I have watched, I believe, the entire series in Japanese, but I didn't bother doing it this go around. It is a very different sounding show, and it does make a difference to your viewing.
Oh yeah.
But we'll get into some of that as we go. But first off, let's start with you, Brandon. I know this is not your first go around with this series, but what was your first go around, and what is your initial impressions?
You know, it's weird. I don't remember. Maybe Brittany introduced me to it. I could be wrong, but it's hard to say.
High likelihood.
But I watched it a while back, probably around the early 2000s, around the time it came out. And I was actually floored by the dub. I think I was watching Shinesman around the same time, but I just thought that the dub was hilarious. And in early 2000s, the dub did come across as hilarious. But I need to take a quick moment, so I will hand it over to Brittany and then come back to me right after.
All right,
And
go ahead, Brittany.
I came introduced to the show I think, probably the same a lot of people did, which was if you had a cable service, you got this anime channel that was run by ADV, and the series was released by ADV. So you got to see this series on an on-demand channel. I enjoyed it, but at the same time, yeah, this show is plagued by references that most people won't get these days. And that's a lot of a humor. There's some self-deprecating. There's some that still last, but a lot of these, and I'm not even saying, the crass humor jokes that may not be like that much these days, but definitely a lot of dated references. I don't even know if kids today know Jessica Simpson, and I know they did a joke of her.
All right. Any other initial thoughts?
The initial thoughts when I watched it, I enjoyed it.
Okay.
This time around, I felt a lot more uneasy with the show.
Right.
Part of that, they have a lot of jokes that we cannot say on YouTube these days.
Yeah.
Particularly about the little brother, but
Yeah.
also about gay and lesbian and transsexuals.
Right. Yeah. Basically, for those unfamiliar, the core cast involves two characters, siblings, whose mother is frequently got her sexuality brought into question. Their father's portrayed as a lush. The younger kid is portrayed as having mental challenges. One kid is frequently and quite in a way that would be uncomfortable in most crowds, is Jewish, and that is used frequently. And then one is portrayed as a hardcore Bible thumping Jesus freak. And then one is just played as a typical horn dog preteen, which is he's probably actually the least.
He's probably the most normal out of all of them.
I feel, unfortunately, we watched this right before the whole mess that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
It just made me more uncomfortable with the Jew jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of them. Yeah, so Brandon, you're back with us. Did you want to finish off your initial thoughts, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think as probably is consistent with most opinions probably tonight, it definitely is humor that was probably left back in the early 2000s, and it never quite caught up to today. I have watched both. I watched both for this. And I'll admit, I've watched the Japanese version before, and it hasn't aged any better or worse. I just considered it very boring and sleep-inducing. But the main difference between now, I consider the dub almost sleep-inducing. The English dub almost sleep-inducing these days. So it is odd that, because it used to be one that I just thought was hilarious, but now there are parts. There are still times, but it doesn't come across as funny. Maybe it's just sensibilities change as we go up, and early 20s versus 40s is a slightly different mindset.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So, yeah, that's all I had to say for my first thoughts.
All right.
One thing to note, this is a series that came to the US as part of a bundle deal. Basically, back in the 90s, everybody was trying to get any anime they can get. And they bought, like in bulk, a bunch of titles. And this was one of them. And when ADV got it, they said, this sucks. Can we edit this? And they made it into this. And I will say, the best jokes are probably in the first half of the show. Because as it gets longer, it just doesn't carry the humor.
Yeah, I think they were getting tired of it.
Yeah.
Until they got to the end.
Well, the show, IMDb claims, and I believe it, that the ADV's dub was entirely improvised. And I think it could very well be that they kind of brought their, maybe not A game, but maybe like their B game for the first few episodes. And then they were just like, screw it. And we'll just wing it for the rest of it.
well, I mean, there's strong standing there. I mean, Chris Patton and Greg Ayres who play the two major male roles.
Yeah.
They were, dropping references to themselves in the series.
There was like one part where they were kind of dissing themselves, like, which I thought was kind of funny. But you're right. I mean, the English cast is not. It's a pretty decent known cast. You got, as you said, Greg Ayres is Leo, Chris Patton is Hajime, Hilary Hagg is Satsuki, Monica Rial is Momoko. Those are actually pretty big names.
They still are.
Yeah.
I don't know if we hear much from Chris these days, but Greg Ayres is still a big name in the dubbing community. Hilary Hagg and Monica Rial are huge names in the dubbing community.
I was going to say, they have tons of credits behind their names.
Right. And then we got Rob Mungle as a Monojaku. And
you'll recognize his voice in a lot of anime too.
Right.
He has a very distinctive voice.
I wouldn't as much typically, because I don't typically do a lot of dubs, but I do enough to where I recognize some of these names. Like I recognize the name Brittany Karbowski as well. She does a few roles on here. So yeah, anyway, for me, I'm sure it was probably a combination of you two, maybe with George thrown in, that introduced me to this one. I really don't know for certain. I don't know for certain under what circumstances I first watched, if it was a couple of episodes or if I was shown the whole series. I really don't remember. Again, I think this is probably my second full watch of the English dub. I know I watched a lot of it of the Japanese. I think I watched the whole thing, but it's been I think last year in October, I decided to start this show, and I think I got through like 2 discs and then got distracted by other things. So the first few episodes were fresher in my mind, but the rest of it, maybe not as much. And my initial impression was that the show was pretty hilarious. My initial impression of the Japanese was that it was mediocre, not terrible, not great, but definitely not what you would think of as a comedy. The English one was mediocre, but in a good way, if that makes sense. But yeah, a lot of the humor is, as Brittany pointed out, a lot of the humor is highly dated. They do make a lot of topical references. And for me, since I'm probably more or less of that generation, I got most of the jokes and it didn't bother me. But I can imagine someone coming to this blind who's like 20 years younger probably go, what the hell are they going on about?
That's not saying they don't get offended.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is, yes, the humor is pretty hilarious when you're 20. It's even more so when you're younger. Like if someone was watching this at like 15, they'd probably think it's the funniest thing they ever saw.
I think that people watching it in Gen Z and Gen Alpha these days would be offended, confused, or a mixture of the two.
Probably. There will be exceptions, of course. I mean, certain types of humor are fairly universal until you get to a certain age. But but there is a lot of crude and coarse mudslinging at different characters. And that's probably the part that aged the most poorly at least for an older audience. There's also a lot of sexual innuendo, which, given the ages of the characters, is either going to be hilarious or highly offensive, depending on your sensibility.
And one thing that bothered me even back then, almost as much as it bothers me now, is the frequent panty shots of the main character. And that's not relegated to just a dub, because that was the animation itself.
I've seen shows where it's much more frequent, but I get what you're saying. Like, given the ages of the characters, any panty shots.
She actually looks her age. She's not like 13 drawn to look like she's 20.
I'm gonna say
looks her age.
Though the panty shots are a little problematic because she is in elementary school. Yeah. But I mean, compared to most anime, it was tame.
Yeah, it's very tame compared to most anime. And it's usually done specific. The two characters, Leo and Hajime, are little horn dogs, and
I mean, it doesn't bother me as
what's up.
It doesn't bother me as much as, say, Jungle Deiku, maybe, but it's still, because, like I say, a lot of times you look at it's like, okay, those are minors, that's not right, but the minors there look like they're 20 something. They don't look like they're like teenagers. This girl actually looks her age. And that's like, she looks like a tween. And that's there. I think that's also what bothers me more. The only thing that bothers me the most actually about what was it? Tales of Abyss, or not Tales of Abyss, Made in Abyss. That's it. Because the kids look like little elementary school kids, and they're talking about sexuality and stuff during some of the scenes. And that bothers me. Otherwise, what I would consider an amazing series.
That one, though, they're Chiba-fied. Like the art style draws them younger than they normally would be.
Yeah, they're older than they normally would be, but they look like 5-year-olds.
Right. Like you said, this one, they're more or less age appropriate. Even though Momoko looks a lot older at a glance, they're at that age where she's 1 year older.
Yeah,
it would make sense that
Well, that would make a difference in the time period.
But the other thing I've got to mention about when it comes to initial and continuing impressions, and this has very much to do with what we were just talking about, is this show has two very interesting theme songs. It has a very good, kind of generic but fun opener that just thematically, it's called Grow Up, and it does sound like it would be a good coming of age kind of, energetic, let's have a fun show opener. But given that this is supposed to be a horror series, it seems jarringly inappropriate. And then you have the Ender.
Oh, I love the Ender.
Sexy, sexy. I love the Ender. Sexy, sexy is a great song, and I love it. And my God, is it wrong for the show?
Yes.
And it makes me laugh every time it comes on because it's so wrong. But they, which makes me wonder what they were doing with these. Did they just randomly pick songs out of a hat, or was it, I don't know. But anyway, so that's kind of my thing. IMDb has a very simple one line. A group of school kids and a possessed cat fight ghosts in their neighborhood. That's not a bad way to describe it, honestly.
Yeah, but the more the ghosts are in the school.
A few of them do make their way out to the neighborhood.
Yeah, especially as the series goes on, it ranges all over.
I mean,
they got that ski trip toward the end, you know. It's
the ski the one that actually was the creepiest to me was the one where people were getting possessed by the mirrors. That one actually I did find creepy when it was when I was watching the more serious version of it. A little bit creepy on the other, but you know, there's only so creepy you can be with that particular dub.
Yeah. The show does have a few atmospheric visuals and some fairly grotesque imagery at times, but for the most part, it's
yeah. But I mean, even the show calls out that they've probably done what 3-4 times the ring in the show.
Yeah. Yeah, they mentioned that a few times or a couple times. Like, what was it near the end? Something like there was a reference, I think, to the birds. They were talking about the birds. Well, at least it wasn't the ring again or something like that.
Yeah. Like, we keep covering the ring. We've covered it like 4 times.
Right.
I actually did like some of the fourth wall breaking humor, because though it doesn't always hold up, there's parts of it that do. And for those of us who were there at that time, you can still kind of remember that time period, and definitely get where the humor is coming from.
Right. So I'm definitely not planning on doing a complete point by point.
Oh, good God.
I frankly don't even remember some of the episodes. So I'll kind of just start and well, actually, we'll start with the characters and then we'll look at some of the episodes. So our main cast is, again, we basically have a quintet of basically Momoko Koiga Kubo, who in the English dub is portrayed as a very prim and proper but slightly doofy Jesus freak who is very judgmental and quick to recite scripture and is constantly reminding her friends that they're going to hell and she's not.
Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your Savior?
It's what are friends for, after all.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yes. And then you've got and she is probably, as we said, a young teen. Slightly younger than her, we have a trio. We have Satsuki Miyanoshita, Hajime Aoyama, and Leo Kakenoki. And Satsuki is essentially our main character. She is the linchpin that the group kind of clusters around. She is the daughter of a woman who apparently put a whole bunch of ghosts and ghoulies and demons and whatever into so-called spiritual sleep. And she she is basically learning as she goes because there's construction going on beyond the old school. And all these things are starting to come back out into the wild because their resting places have been disturbed. And so she is trying to put them all back into spiritual sleep and has a book that they discovered early on that was left by her mother. And then she has this two guy friends. Hajime is the guy across the street. And again, he's pretty much your typical preteen horn dog, doesn't take anything seriously except for his panty shots, pretty much. And his friend Leo, who is in the English dub, frequently, routinely, excessively, not only called a Jew, but that is used as the basis for quite a few jokes at his expense. He is very similar in a lot of ways to Hajime, but clearly the less outgoing and more of a know-it-all. He, considers himself a psychical researcher and a computer nerd, and all that stuff. And then we have Keiichiro Miyashita, Satsuki's little brother, the tag-along, who, barring a few lines that I thought were hilarious because they were so wrong coming out of his mouth, for the most part, he exists to annoy everyone, the audience and the people on the screen. And there are a lot of jokes at his expense, which, as Brittany said, we can't really repeat a lot of them here on the air. They are somewhat inappropriate.
They were inappropriate then too, but
yes,
they're definitely a lot more inappropriate now.
right.
They're
Satsuki
flat
and
out
Keiichiro's...
banned on YouTube. So
What's that?
those words are flat out banned.
Yeah. Satsuki and Keiichiro's parents are Reiichiro and Kayako. Kayako is dead. She passed away at some point before the start of the show. But we do meet her in a later episode as a much younger person who sounds like she's in her 30s.
That's because they didn't change the voice actors.
No, they didn't bother. And like I said, Reiichiro kind of drifts through several episodes. He's usually the butt of the joke when he shows up. And then we have their cat, Kaya, who early on becomes possessed by a nasty spirit by the name of Amanajaku. And Amanajaku / Kaya is also kind of drifts in and out of the episodes, but ends up more often than not helping the kids out of pure selfishness because he wants them to be his prey. So he helps them when they can't help themselves, basically. And most of the time, he's just a little smartass. Actually reminded me a lot of Salem from the old Sabrina series.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was some inspiration there because it was popular at the time. Or actually, not at the time, but it was very close to that time.
Yes. That was more mid to late 90s, but yeah.
I'm sure the creators would have remembered it. And or you could look at Kiki's little pet. Or Zachary Binks.
Gigi's nowhere near as much of a smartass.
Yeah. But this one, I did think the cat's probably one of my favorite characters in the the series.
No doubt about it. So that's the main cast. Anyone have anything else they want to add to any of them?
Nope.
Okay. All right. And our little picture here we have as our background does have the main five and that weirdo looking in through the window. That's a Monojaku in his true form. But any rate, the show starts with basically Satsuki and Keiichiro and their father are returning to the place where their parents met. This is, after her passing away, they basically go home, as it were, but it was, like I said, home for him, not so much for them. And they end up going to their parents' old school, although it's a new building. The old schoolhouse is now kind of boarded off and has a reputation for being haunted and all that stuff. So, of course, the two of them, they've met Hajime at this point because he is, again, the next door neighbor. I don't remember precisely what brings all five of them into the building.
The cat.
At first. The cat, okay. But yes, they and the cat do find themselves within the old schoolhouse. Well, no, they chased the cat in. I'm trying to remember what brought the others in.
I have no idea why Jesus Freak ended up in there.
Right.
I think
he was trying to convert.
I think the other two ended up just following them in and saying they basically followed them there, basically say, "What are you doing? You shouldn't be in here."
Yeah, she tried to guilt them into helping look for the cat. I do remember that.
Yeah.
But basically, they get in there. They find out very quickly that the place is a bit haunted. That it definitely is not what they what it said on the school brochure, but here's the thing. I wonder, to watch anime, you'd think that they're always rebuilding schools and leaving the shell of the old school right next door. Yeah, but it doesn't seem to. I know that doesn't happen here very often, but maybe every now and then. But basically, they find, I believe they make their way to the principal's office, and that's where, in a portrait of, actually, I think it was their grandmother, if I remember correctly.
No, it was her mom.
Oh,
her mom was the principal there.
Okay. Well, in her portrait, they find the book, the one that she had as a student, that gives her notes on what she did to the various characters. They run afoul of a Monojaku. They kind of tick him off, and he decides to start threatening them. And they use the book, and they successfully, it seems, get rid of him, only to find out that they accidentally sealed him in Kaya, the cat. So they are directly, Satsuki is pretty much directly responsible for her cat being possessed, which of course pisses off a Monojaku. Although as time goes on, he seems to kind of warm to the role in a sense. It's kind of like in Ranma. Ranma at first absolutely hates the curse. He is furious at being cursed. But as the show goes on, he starts milking that thing. And
because I was away from the mic when you were talking about it. The reason why there's always a second school in anime, Japan has a weird law that makes it difficult to tear down old buildings.
Ah, okay. I just find it interesting because I spent the first half of, I spent a good portion of today in a building where literally that is what they did. They raised the old building and built a new one on the site, which is what, where I work. That is what they have done. And usually here when buildings are abandoned, it's kind of, they either get torn down or they'll get turned into something else. You don't just but that's not always the case. I wish that was, there are a lot of things like that's a whole topic. Let's not go there. But that is good to know because I had wondered about that. There are a lot of things in anime that build off of each other and might not actually be all that endemic, but it sounds like that might actually be one of them that is based on something. But so anyway, yeah. So, and according to the, we have a few different translations for titles. I'm looking at the Ghost Revived Tonight, Manajaku, or what have you. So then, and as I go, if anyone wants to stop and talk about a particular episode, feel free. The first 4, like I said, that's probably the disc I've seen the most often. So they're kind of the ones I know the best. And the second one is the hand that came out of the toilet. The red paper, blue paper. That one was that was kind of a shitty demon there. But
Yellow paper.
Yellow paper, yes. So what are y'all's thoughts on the first couple episodes? Anything particular?
Well, I mean, I've used Akamano in ironically the second issue of my own comic. So I was well aware of that story at the beginning. Most of the ghosts, I mean, if you've watched several anime, especially anime that brings in school legends,
right?
Yes, you get the same ghosts.
Yeah. A lot of these were very familiar, or they were variations on a theme that's fairly familiar, and some of them will be familiar to Western audiences too. I'm not sure about the hand reaching out of the toilet, but I'm sure many a person.
Zelda. A
What's that?
lot of people probably. It was in Legend of Zelda.
Oh, okay.
Mask Majora, to be precise.
Okay.
Well, they do a lot of these type. I mean, the whole what was it? The dummy that the anatomy dummy that comes to life, stuff like that. These are all stuff. I remember watching Haunted Junction not long after this one, which I also considered a mediocre series. Again, similar ghosts. I mean, a lot of them just come from basic lore, and they just kind of went with it.
Right. Or like the next couple, we have the Cursed Arts Festival, where Leo gets a big head about becoming an actor, and then we have Requiem from the Dead, where Satsuki hears a ghostly pianist playing for Elise, and it's 3 times you hear it in Yoragana? Was it 3 or 4?
4.
4 times you hear it.
Because in Japan, 4 is an unlucky number.
And I'll admit, it was one of the ones I like the most. I like that one a lot, the piano one, for some reason.
The piano one was a good one.
That's all the creative ways that the piano somehow managed to follow her around.
Yes. But it was one of the more moderately creepy ones. And of course, that particular piece of music, I absolutely love that music, and it lends itself really well to that story. You know what I mean? Like the idea of that particular piece of music being a requiem for the dead, basically, is quite intriguing. Or so I would think at any rate. They do actually, and I don't know if this was the original. I don't think they changed any of the music in the dub.
No.
There were moments. What's that?
They didn't change the music, to my knowledge.
There were moments in the dub where they referenced the music, saying that it sounded like this or that. And I always found that kind of interesting because I was like, oh, you're not wrong about that. But this was obviously one of the most blatant uses of Western music because, for Elise is a major one. Then we go into the Bloody Sports Festival. That was the one where little kid was trying to be a runner, right?
Yeah, the feet cutting demon.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we got the Night of Tragedy. I'm not 100% sure I know what that one. I guess that was the one about the old hag that attacked the kids that were alone. And then the seventh one. This was the one Brandon mentioned before, the soul-stealing mirror. And I agree. The mirror episode was pretty good. That was, it was kind of creepy.
Yeah, that was one of those that I mean, if I had to watch this one again, I would probably watch it in the English dub because I was so bored by the Japanese one. But that's one of the few episodes that I'd actually do the opposite because it comes across as creepier.
And I'm trying to remember, the circuit connects to hell. Demon of the Underworld.
That must have been the computer one where they have the website.
Yes, it's the internet ghost.
Yeah.
I actually did like the way the alternate universe thing where he starts off in the very empty world and then goes into hell and all that. I thought that was kind of cool.
Then you get number 9.
Yeah.
The most infamous episode.
Was it the one with Showtime?
The rabbit.
And I'm sitting here thinking, funny thing is, I just checked out a book from the library that I am way overdue for reading. A book that's well known for the phrase, sometimes dead is better. I was thinking about that in this one. Sometimes dead is better. It was... Yeah. Which I really wonder if they had Pet Sematary in mind when they did this episode. I wonder.
Well, that'd be based through the Japanese cast, but in the anime, it's just it has probably the best joke in the series. Now it's slightly racist.
Well, in a way, I think some of the racial humor can be dealt with in some ways because it's not being used to say that what they're saying is right. It's coming across like these kids are racist, sexist. They're just they're just assholes. So and if you look at it that way, it's understandable they would be making jokes like that.
It's kind of like the same deal as like shows like The Simpsons or Family Guy or South Park. Can get away with Homer or Peter or Cartman saying the things they say because they're morons.
Well, Cartman's more because he's evil. And everybody establishes that he's evil.
Well, it's like that episode of South Park where Randy plays Wheel of Fortune and he answers that question.
Okay, well, Randy is a moron. Yes.
Yes, Randy is a moron.
But yes, and that one, you're right. It is well established that Cartman is evil, and that nothing he says should be taken as
hell no.
You know. But here, these kids are being portrayed as not good people. So if you look at it that way, you're right. There is some leeway, but
I mean, it's none of the characters are really likable in the English all that much.
No. No.
The little brother just annoys you. It doesn't even. You don't even have to go the route with the word we cannot use. Just his constant.
Yeah, like where he was just. I swear the voice actor in that point was just like, I can't think of what to say. So,
well, and then he does these things like they got this little kid saying things like, "So when are the hookers showing up?"
Well, he's playing GTA, man.
What's that?
Even though they're playing Dark Cloud, which I recognize Dark Cloud because I was playing that game too at that time. Right. But talking about GTA. The father sounds like he's the father from Scary Movie. Remember, honey, hide the crack.
Yeah. And then there was this one interchange between Hajime and Keiichiro. You interrupted Girls Gone Wild Backwoods of Kentucky for this? Hey, that's the limited incest edition. I'm like,
it's Kentucky. God, it's always incest.
But yeah, these kids. So the next one's The Tunnel with No Exit. Then we got the Talking Doll. I don't even remember that one.
The Talking Doll was a little bit creepy, but I remember a lot of it was the dog kept calling her on the phone.
I don't remember The Nurse Who Tells Your Death either. Honestly, I might have fallen asleep during one of those.
The Nurse
Who Tells You Death was not actually a bad ghost.
Okay.
In the end,
some of them weren't
there to give a message from their mother who passed to them.
Oh yeah, that was when they went back to
that was
the hospital
the next...
that her mother was in.
Oh, okay, yeah, that one.
It was the painting one where they go back in time.
The next one's the one where they go back in time. The one with the guy who calls himself Da Vinci, and because
Vic, how do I say his name? Menegoa, or the voice of Edward Elric. Same actor. Played Da Vinci.
Really? Okay. So that was one that was kind of interesting because, like, you have Satsuki for some reason.
Some reason? Huh? Did we lose him?
Almost.
Must be a connection.
What's that?
Must be a bad connection.
You just cut off entirely sound wise.
Okay. Am I good now?
Yeah.
Good now.
So whatever point you were trying to make, you might want to repeat it.
Okay. Well, basically, I was just saying that was the one where, for some reason, Satsuki ended up painting almost an identical painting to one that her mother had done. And it turns out, because of course, her mother had used that painting to trap this spirit before. But he was set free when a new painting was created. And what's more, he was able to use it as sort of a wormhole to travel through time. And he ends up kidnapping Momoko and taking her back to 20 years ago or however long it was. And so Satsuki gets to meet someone she quickly comes to realize are her parents. She meets both of her parents, and her father thinks she's cute and gives her a present, and her mother thinks she's cute and wants to do more than give her a present. And she ends up having to play matchmaker by the end of the episode. So I think so. I believe there was a Back to the Future reference here, which I should hope people would still get that. But but it was an interesting episode, I thought. But it was, Da Vinci is he actually honestly reminded me of like a low rent Brooke, like not good, not Brooke the way that he ought to be portrayed, but maybe like his doofy cousin or something.
He did the 4 Kids version of Brooke.
Yes, exactly. And then we have the railway crossing, which is draining Momoko's life because of a vengeful spirit. Devil Spell, Rite of Darkness. I have no idea what that is.
Basically, it's the Coven.
Yeah. Yes, the Coven.
Yeah.
Which that was a pretty dark episode too. But that was overloaded with topical humor, I think, and probably that would be one, I think, where a lot of the jokes may or may not have lasted.
There was a lot of the craft in that.
Yes. The craft, and I believe others was referenced, and
pretty much any witch movie.
Pretty much.
Kind of referenced in that one.
Yeah, there was a reference to Witches of Quick, that kind of thing. The apartment that eats people, nest of evil spirits. I think that was one of the ones I didn't pay much attention to.
It wasn't a good one. It was. Well, it's got an 8 rating on IMDb. I don't think too many people really cared for it.
8?
I don't remember it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got a rating of 8.
So
being
great,
out 2 others for the lowest rank.
And then we have the Ski Lodge episode where there's the vengeful spirit of a girl who drowned in the lake. Got the voice of the.
I do like how they tried to switch it out, so that they kind of make you think that it's the older sister or older woman, and it turns out to be the one that's been with them the whole time. But at the same time, I mean, it was predictable, but I think that making it comedic kind of helped with the subterfuge a little bit. Though it was a little bit off-putting that she was constantly talking about having sex, and I
was going to say there was some racial humor.
That,
some somewhat inappropriate. Akane-san of the Broadcasting Room. I really have no memory of that either.
Last Ring reference, Ghost.
Yeah, that was they get trapped in there, and everybody who broadcasts ends up dying.
And then we had the one about the headless rider, and unfortunately, this is not the headless rider from Dura, who was a much more interesting character. This was just a guy who supposedly would take your head if you weren't wearing a scarf. So there was a lot of references to fashion in this one. Probably was an episode that wouldn't go over well with the LGBT plus community. And that's saying something in this series.
Yeah.
And then the final one, the big hurrah at the end, where this big demon Oma comes in and Amano Jaku steps up to actually help these people.
And they do play it off where
and
he
they-
kind of softens to them a little bit throughout the series. Like he'll come in and help a little bit throughout, which is good. They kind of build up on the character.
Right, because not all the spirits in this are evil, and even in Monojaku, as you said, he softens up a little. There are a few, like Hanako's a well-known spirit that is portrayed almost entirely in a positive light in this show, but she doesn't have a large...
I forget his name, but it's the school book statue. That's the statue is technically in every Japan school because it represents the god of learning.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and the two of them, I think there's one or two. Yeah. They tend to show up either almost to help or they're just observing. There's that one little dog with an ugly dude's face who definitely doesn't help, but he doesn't really hurt anyone either. He just wanders around.
Making a snide comment here and there. What you looking at?
Yeah. But that's like the whole plot in a nutshell. It's a very, very, very episodic series. Very few of the episodes build strongly into each other. I mean, there's minor changes, but very few of the episodes really, you can watch most of them out of order, and I doubt you'd be missing much.
Just watch the first one. As long as you watch the first one first and the last one last, the rest of it basically is whatever.
Right. But do y'all have any of the episodes that you really want to dive into, or any particular scenes or anything that, like I said, just kind of sped through that? But if you want to,
I can technically play the bunny joke right now.
Okay.
I am not going to, but I have it on my soundboard.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a lot of the bunny episode was pretty good. Like I said, the ones that stuck out to me the most was that one, the one with the piano, and the one about the mirror.
Yeah.
So those definitely stuck out the most.
What's that?
All of them in the first half.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it? But yeah, I think we can move on to production.
Yeah.
Let me put in for Dave that Dave considered this one of the funniest animes he ever seen, and he wanted us to know that.
Okay.
There's a few that I can suggest.
But I guess keep in mind the senses of humor too. So, but yeah, I would say that it is sad that Dave couldn't be with us because he loves the series, and it would be good to have somebody who still loves the series to talk it up. Because I don't think any one of us here hate the series or disliked it back in the day.
I don't hate the series. I just the jokes just don't land as well.
Yeah. That's one of those, I think, that if we went back 20 years, our discussion might have been different.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it.
God, it's kind of sad to say. It's like, if we go back 20 years. Damn.
And also, if I've been watching it under different circumstances, especially 20 years ago, and I guess this might be kind of sad to say too, but to be honest, if I had been re-watching this 20 years ago, I have a feeling I would have been drinking quite a bit as I watched it. So I would probably have gotten a lot more out of the humor, because this is the kind of humor that if you're drunk, you're probably going to think it's the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
Is that kind of humor.
It's too bad that cannabis wasn't legal back then.
Oh man, I wonder what this would be like stoned. It would.
I mean, there are anime that are probably better when you're stoned.
Probably.
I can't vouch for this one being better.
Well, yeah. Oh, you're saying better than like
Yeah.
the experience is
There's some
improved?
absolute trippy anime out there.
Yeah.
Well, I can say that it's probably that this one probably holds up better than Ping Pong Club.
Well,
Probably.
considering I've always hated that one,
You know.
One of these days we'll have to cover that one. And
No.
see.
I've seen enough of Turtle.
No. Oh man. You know though, I wonder if DG Sherratt would be better stoned.
Maybe.
That one I would expect it would be, because that's one that actually is a different story, because that's one that I really disliked when I first saw it back in the day. But when I came back to it like 20 years later, I actually liked it a lot. So it's kind of so it can go the other way too.
Right.
But yeah, so I guess production.
Yeah, I guess if we're ready to move into it, we've already commented on a few of the things, like the art style. Like we commented on how the kids are more or less appropriately aged in the way they're portrayed. What do y'all think overall of the art style? Do you think it is effective to the kind of show that this was trying to be? Is
No. It's a very basic look.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go horror, you go a little more darker in tone and color, and maybe a little more detail. If you wanted to go straight humor, you probably lighten up the ghosts a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it was aimed at a younger audience.
Right.
The original, not the main, but
well, the original was called Stories. What was it? Let me hear. The proper term. I want to get it right. It's called School Ghost Stories.
Yeah.
Was the original.
Like I say, that might have been the reason for choosing it. Is it might have been maybe they were trying to aim lower. And then, of course, the English dub decided to aim really low. But I wonder if that's one of the reasons why they chose to go like this. Because it's not trying really to be that much of a horror anime. It's more of a, like, just a spooky time anime.
Yeah.
That's there.
Yeah. Like spooky stories to tell in the dark, but scary stories to tell in the dark, but not as good.
Exactly.
Okay.
I would say personally, I like the art style, but I've seen much better and I've seen much worse. It's kind of in the middle.
It wasn't really flawed. So, I mean, you got to have credit there, because there are some anime from that time that are just junk.
And they didn't take as many shortcuts as a lot of shows do. Like most of the scenes were more or less fully animated. Some of the monster designs are interesting, some of them not so much. The basic human designs, I'll admit, they're pretty generic. Like, you can tell the main characters apart really easily. And what's up?
Oh, cat's trying to eat my computer.
Now, Leo has that weird thing where they do, I don't know what they're trying to do with his lips. That's something that I've never really liked in any show when they do that. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know what that's. I don't think.
Sadly, it's a little of a racial stereotype. Here in America, it would be the racist sort of Sambo character.
Yeah.
So yeah, he gets those lips. It's not uncommon to see those lips on characters. I mean, for the heck, Usopp in One Piece has those lips.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but Usopp, it makes more sense given, here if Leo is supposed to be Jewish, I'm not sure what they're going for there. But I know what you mean. Like it is an unfortunate thing that but also just looks bad. And maybe it's because that's the association in America. Maybe that's why it looks bad to me.
Well, I
I
mean,
just think it looks bad.
we here in America, we like to blame ourselves for some of the racial stereotypes of imagery, but they're worldwide. Honestly, if you look at European drawings or Asian drawings or even African drawings, you can see a lot of racial stereotypes put in when they're talking about somebody else.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. You definitely do. And I'll say with this one, as far as the art style in this one, well, they do have, when they meet their mother at their age, she does look almost exactly like Satsuki, but has darker hair. Which is kind of weird because you see pictures of her later and their hair is the same color. But I guess, sometimes people's hair gets lighter with age. But but yeah, they look almost identical, except for the hair, which is kind of interesting. I do like the way that the cat is drawn. I feel like he's a very expressive cat, and I thought they did a very good job with that. And overall, I'll give the show, fair marks for art. As far as the music, like we've already kind of mentioned, there are some good uses of music scattered throughout, mostly the For Elise episode, but there are also some horrible uses of music. And those two enders are both, the opener and the ender are both great, but neither one fits the show. And the ender really doesn't fit the show.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So, does anybody know why it was 20 episodes? It's just
probably budget.
Because I'm not used to the number 20. I'm usually used to like 3 or 12 or 13 or 24.
It probably was slated for a 24 run, but they probably blew the budget and had to cut it down to 20.
They must have known ahead of time too, because they actually did manage to get the they managed to end the thing. So
the original third episode, per IMDb, the original third episode, which is now numbered episode 21, was supposed to be an episode centered around Kuchisake Onna. The episode never aired following complaints from parents with children who had palate disorders and cleft lip. The preview of the second episode had shown certain traits that apparently set them off. So according to this, that preview is the only public showing of that episode. But I guess maybe certain releases of the series might have that episode. I don't think our release did.
I mean, it could have been pulled from Japan and they just never included it in the bundle.
Right.
Because it was pulled in Japan. It was never aired. So.
And ANN lists another episode. The Shogatsu Supersharu Obake Daishugo. I know nothing else about that episode, so I don't know what's going on with that one. But those two episodes are not part of the American release. So apparently there were 22 episodes
so
produced.
It was closer to what a regular
it just
would be.
Yeah.
They just them.
Right. So That's interesting to think even a show like this would court controversy.
Well, I mean, in the
Uh,
90s to 2000s, anime was in a limbo of a sorts
Mhm.
where they couldn't decide on where the limit should be.
Right.
Because we came out of the 80s with very crass, bloody, lot of
Oh, yeah.
nudity, and censorship started to wheel its head around this point on anime.
Yeah, I do think that it probably would have gotten all 22 episodes had it aired more recently. Not the English dub, but I mean like the original Japanese, because it was so tame. I doubt that would have caused problems nowadays.
Right.
But yeah, there's just so much.
Mhm.
But then again, I mean, we were going through our own censorship war. I mean, we're always in a censorship war by one party or another. This one was the whole night trap controversy, and but when this thing came out, we were at the opposite end of censor nothing and say as much twisted stuff as you can.
Right.
And that
It's
this
where
really
at this time it was the FCC started relaxing its hold.
that was when
on
South Park
censorship.
had the episode where they said the S word like as many times as humanly possible because they were allowing them to say it.
Well, do we have a listing somewhere for exactly when this had an American release?
Let's see here. I had it set up here from its Wikipedia page. I'm looking at it. So
Let's
it was
see.
so
Cartoon Network was
the
2005.
television show. The show came out in 1994.
Mhm.
The dub is
1994.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
94.
Yeah.
Where is that listed?
Ghost Stories on Wikipedia.
Because I'm looking at Anime News Network lists the air dates as 2000, 2001, like the original air date.
That's because they did air the dubs on streaming. Some of the earliest streaming that was available, but they did air it. It went on Comcast, at least I know. I can't speak for rivals to Comcast cable, but this series, along with a lot of ADV titles at the time, got airplay on demand.
Okay, I gotta look that up. I'm curious.
I know ANN isn't always 100%. So
I would usually trust it over Wikipedia.
Oh, I mean, there are a lot of instances in that where some anime doesn't have hardly anything. So it's always good to get a second opinion regardless.
Okay, no, I'm looking. Wikipedia says it was a TV series in 94 and an anime in 2000. So that's.
I wonder what the TV series was. Maybe I don't know. But any case,
probably worse than this because it never made it to the US.
The dub took place around that 2001 era,
right?
Which
would have been around the time that South Park was kind of at the height of its glory.
Bigger, Longer, Uncut came out in 2000.
So yeah, it was at that point where it really was 100% like we're going to push the limits of censorship. The aughts, that's what the aughts was about. I think most people really don't get that as much these days because many of the younger people who are complaining about this stuff don't remember the aughts, and many of the people
who have been born during the aughts.
Yeah, and many of the people who are pushing to ban stuff now are too old to have enjoyed the aughts. So it's kind of like, we're in the middle where most of us have lived it, and like that's not offensive. This is offensive.
If you think that's offensive, check this out.
I mean, these days, and I can speak from a couple of the series I've watched over the last several months, Japan is getting heavier-handed on censorship. While I don't know if we're still being heavy-handed or not here in the US. It's kind of weird. It's like we're on the pendulum where it's going back to leave it uncensored.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, but it's because it's kind of shifting who's being the loudest about it.
Well, like I
and
say,
how and why.
It is a pendulum. I mean, in the 90s, we had heavy censorship. And then in the aughts, we had none, hardly.
Well, we had some.
Yeah, I wouldn't say
we had some, but like...
We got 4 kids in the aughts.
Yeah, comparatively to the 90s, I mean, though. But look at the 80s. The 80s were practically... 70s, actually, I should say. The 80s...
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
The 70s, everything went. The motion picture limits were finally falling off, and things were much raunchier, and they were able to push the limits, and they tried to get a hold on it. And now we're in an era where censorship is taking a bigger turn again.
Actually, it's interesting. Like right at the start of the 70s, and I saw Brandon. You posted the thing about the passing of Richard Roundtree, which is unfortunate. But I figured in tribute to him, I'd go and play the old Shaft song. But Shaft came out right at the start of the 70s, and that one, the song has a moment where Isaac Hayes is about to go a little too far with his language, and the girl's like, shut your mouth, But that's like just showing like the way things were going in the 70s. Like that was one of the early things that helped break that mold and send the 70s in the directions that it went. So that's kind of just came to mind. I thought that was interesting timing there. But the 70s and 80s, we've covered some stuff on the movie group going, ooh, this was allowed.
Like I say, I think that's the 90s really tried to reel it in, and it'll go back to the way it was. I mean, I think we haven't gotten to the point where censorship is at its height yet here, but once we get to that, eventually the pendulum will swing the other direction. And I don't know whether it'll be anything goes like it was in the aughts, but it'll be there. It's just a matter of cultural changes and what they're exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But with that being said, should we, I guess, get into favorites?
I guess if no one else has anything they want to bring out about the production or anything. Okay. Well, I guess we will start then with you, Brittany. Do you have a favorite character in this series or a favorite scene or episode?
Well, being a good Christian girl, I have to go with Momo as favorite character.
Okay.
Just having that Jesus-loving character. I've known too many people like that.
Yes, I've known people like that too.
Favorite? What was the rest of it?
Just like what would be your favorite scene or episode? And actually, let's throw another one in because this is an anthology series where they kind of threw everything but the kitchen sink at the viewer. What do you wish had been in terms of like ghost stories, in terms of or supernatural stuff that might show up in an anime? What do you think was a missed opportunity that you would have liked to see?
I can give you that answer right now. A few days after Chucky was arrested in Mexico, I would have liked to see a classic slasher character.
Ah. Okay.
Favorite scene? I got a clip of the bunny joke. It's gotta be, calling out why she brought the bunny back to life.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty fun. But how about you, Brandon?
Character Amana Jaku, definitely. And favorite scene, I like a lot of what went on in the episode. Like I said, the mirror episode, I thought it was actually suitably spooky. But I can't think of any particular joke that made me laugh out loud this time around.
From that episode, I think the best joke was her trying to, the main character trying to explain to her little brother if he finished his homework. And she has to read it backwards because he's dyslexic.
Can't. I'd say my favorite, as far as like what I think they could have done, I would have liked to have seen a Kappa episode. I mean, might as well. They're covering a lot of the other Japanese ghosts, but have the Kappa like that, but have it also be like they're using cucumbers, and the whole thing with cats and cucumbers. So have that go.
Sure.
Actually, and just as a shout out, I think is something interesting that's kind of overlooked game-wise when you talk about spooky things that be playing in the season. Ghostwire Tokyo is a great one for Japanese horror. A lot of people, I think, overlook that one because it just kind of got forgotten. But it's very fun, and it dives into a lot of classic Japanese monsters. You have Kappa catching in that one, so it's just fun in a lot of senses.
Good times. Is it the Death Kappa?
No, not the Death Kappa.
When you have a city in Japan that literally has lined its streets with yokai, which is Japanese ghosts and spirits, and you just see these weird ass artworks through the city. It's understandable. There's going to be a lot that they miss in this show.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of cool stuff with that game. They did a lot of cool stuff with anyway, because they actually did try to recreate Tokyo for you to wander through. Not all of it, of course, but a good portion of it. And I thought that was pretty cool.
That would be immense file space to get that large of a...
Shoot, just what they had was pretty impressive.
Right. So, for me, yes, I'm going to have to admit, Kaya / Amana Jaku, the possessed cat, basically, that was my favorite character. Absolutely, I loved what they did with that one. But I would say Momoko is probably my second favorite. I got some amusement, even though she was a sanctimonious bitch most of the time. I guess that really was the joke. As far as favorites, I'm not sure about a specific scene, but probably some of the moments in the mirror episode and some of the moments in the Fairlise episode, I guess, would probably be some of my favorites there. And then, I got to admit, the Girls What Gone Wild joke amused me because it was so wrong. There were a couple of those that just amused me because of how wrong they were. And then as far as missed opportunities, the ski episode, the ghost was basically a vengeful spirit of a drowned girl. I felt like the episode was setting me up for a Yuki-onna, and I was very disappointed that I didn't get a proper
Well, I mean, I can explain that, as I have a character that is a Yuki-onna. Japan doesn't feel Yuki-onna are really meant to be scary.
Ah.
So if you're going to do a horror series, you don't really cover Yuki-onna.
Ah, okay. Well, depends on your viewpoint. I think the main character in Rosario was more than a little bit scared by the Yuki-onna, but that was mostly because she wanted to mate with him and didn't care
Well,
if he
I was
froze
gonna
the
say,
process.
well, there was nothing scary about that anime because it was just well, it was more of a comedy. But actually, I can think of at least one.
Probably scared.
Ayakashi Japanese Horror Tales did have a Yuki-onna episode.
Yeah. And if
So-
I remember correctly, I think there was like the proper title of this was what Gaku no Kaidan. There is that movie that is in the Criterion Collection that was released here as Kaidan, and it has a Yuki-onna episode. And if I'm remembering correctly, it is portrayed as a horror tale in that instance. But I know
but the legend of Yuki-onna is mainly they would invite men to go out in the cold and die of the cold.
Right.
Basically entice them with sexiness and do that way.
Yeah, that's essentially sirens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which so you could debate whether that's a positive or a negative, a horrible or not. Like sirens are not typically thought of as being the most positive of things either, but they but I know what you mean. Like if you're talking full on horror, it's probably not. But again, this series does have spirits in it that are not horrific spirits.
Yeah.
So they could have had one in the cast or something. Like, I would have been, I would have liked to see that. And I felt like I was set up for it with the ski episode because, you know what I mean. But at any rate, I guess that just about covers it, unless anyone has anything else they want to throw out.
Not really.
Well, then I'll grab this back.
Go for it.
We need to set up next month. So I guess I usually just check with the people who are here, because those who are here during the discussion are the ones that really deserve to have the best opportunity to lead the discussion. I mean, Roger technically has the choice for December because it's his birthday month, but next month is November, though the stores seem to think it's December right now.
That's okay. I thought it was Halloween back in August.
Yeah, it was Halloween back in August so that they could set up for Christmas in September.
Yeah.
But what was it? The anime this time, I would think that something lighthearted wouldn't be a bad idea. I know this might be considered lighthearted, but I actually really considered this more.
Well, we've done this, including this, and last time we've done 2 comedies in a row.
What was it? August was what was August? It was your choice.
August
was Tearjerker. No.
August was Tearjerker.
September was Shinesman.
So I think we should go with something. It could be lighthearted, but
definitely not like
comedy.
the other that we did.
So are we going ahead and throwing out options now, or
let's throw out some options. I'm going to put in the private chat for each one so that I can put them down. I'm trying to think of some ones. I could say Ping Pong Club, but gosh, that would probably draw nobody if I did that.
Nope.
I'm trying to think of some fun ones that would be enjoyable, not necessarily full out comedies, but just but not something like depressing either.
Right. Trying to see what else.
If we're going for that, let's see.
Okay, that's one definitely. You know what? I'll put in the first season of that.
Oh, the first season?
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll say the first 12 episodes.
Okay. I
Or
was going to say, isn't the first season the one that's like 50 episodes long?
I would say basically enough to where it gets to where you're, if it's like around 12 episodes and they're still in the middle of the storyline, finish the storyline, obviously, but
Right.
to cut off in that area.
Mm.
Trying to think of a second one.
How many are we doing?
2 each.
Okay.
I've got a D6 here.
Light hearted.
Let's see. So this is your opportunity. You could put forward one piece.
I would put forward the movies or OVAs to be better honest. Not OVAs, the stories of, which are short movies, basically.
Let's see. Right,
Yeah,
check and see. This cat didn't.
I know one. I know one else.
She did.
Let's see. Oh, I'm putting the wrong chat. One more. Let me see.
Okay.
That's more of
my
a
other one.
shorter shonen series that I just put
I
in
know
the-
my other one. Okay, so let's see here. There we go.
Okay.
So one more for Brittany, and then we're good.
Okay.
I almost decided I almost thought about K-On, but I was like, no, I'm not.
Killing would be fun. We'll have to get to it eventually.
Well, yeah, let's do that one.
Yeah, Read or Die, the OVA is kind of cool. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I've got both the first and second season, and I haven't watched either.
Actually, all of these are ones I have in the collection and haven't watched my copy, so it could all work.
Actually, do you have access to all of these, Brittany?
Technically, yeah. Sketchbook, maybe not.
I forget.
But,
is it on High Dive? I don't know.
It might be on High Dive. That's the only thing I'm like, okay, it might be on High Dive.
But all right, I'm just gonna take it in that order, just as that,
Sounds good.
from the top to bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. So let's go there. That is number 5.
Sketchbook. Okay.
I was actually kind of hoping for Zombieland Saga, but it just
Oh,
Sketchbook is one that I'm curious about returning to. That one might not hold up either. I don't know.
okay.
I really liked it at the time.
Well, good to know. Well,
Actually,
should be
I think
fun.
you liked it too at the time, didn't you, Brittany?
I did. It's truly saying if we were going for a light show, that's definitely, it's not hard, heavy comedy, but it's just a lighthearted show.
Because it's not
Kind
full
of a joy to
comedy
watch.
either. It's a slice of life. I
It's a
think.
slice of life.
Okay.
Yeah, I picked that one out of a hat.
All right.
But all right, so we'll do that. We'll take a look around, see where it's playing, and then I'll put it in the chat. But so our next one up will be Sketchbook Full Colors.
Okay.
And we will see you all on the next one. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.